Joe, been locked inside your room all day. What's wrong?
What's wrong? Are you serious? Do you really not get it?
Does this have something to do with the whole gay marriage thing?
It's not fair, okay? I was the first one who said it should be legal, but now you're the one getting all the credit.
That's not true.
Oh yeah? Oh really? Then why are you all dressed up?
I'm going to a gala with Lady Gaga and Elton John.
Oh! See? That should be me. Vice presidents never get to go anywhere.
Joe, come on. You should be proud of what you did on Meet the Press. You're a great vice president, Joe.
That, of course, Saturday Night Live's treatment of the dynamic, shall we say, after the vice president's news, the dynamic of the White House. Our political roundtable is here with me. President of the American Conservative Union, Al Cardenas. Former mayor of San Francisco, now Lieutenant Governor of California, Democrat Gavin Newsom. The host of MSNBC's Hardball and the Chris Matthews Show, as well as the author of the book Jack Kennedy, Elusive Hero, Chris Matthews, and columnist for the Washington Post, Kathleen Parker and Jonathan Capehart. Well, welcome to all of you. Chris Matthews, we could certainly say there's been some palace intrigue. Look at the cover of the New Yorker that's coming out with the pillars in the rainbow. I think this clip really captures it, which is this disarray that the vice president got out ahead of himself and forced the president to do something that they say he was going to do.
Yeah, and the stunning thing, David, is that they want us to know about the friction.
Yeah.
All the staffers all leaking out how angry they are. People identified as top campaign aide, people in the vice president's office, people in the president's office. All this intrigue publicly being really being dished out to us.
Yeah.
Why do they want us to know that they're angry at the vice president?
Did the vice president apologize to the president?
And my question is, if they're angry at him for being impulsive, why are they being impulsive? Why are they acting out on their anger? Why don't they just be professional about it and say, well, we'll move on? I don't quite get why they want this spat to be public. That's the big question.
Here's the president talking to Robin Roberts of ABC about this issue.
I had already made a decision that we were going to probably take this position before the election and before the convention. He probably got out a little bit over his skis, but out of generosity of spirit.
So, Gavin Newsom, Lieutenant Governor, you're a political leader.
As a Lieutenant Governor, I'm sensitive on
that. But I mean, do you believe the president was really going to change his mind?
I don't know. I honestly don't know, and I agree with Chris. I don't understand the process here. I don't understand the thinking, except I'm proud of the president. I'm proud he stood up on principle. I'm proud he's on the right side of history, and I'm proud he did it during an election because it took an extraordinary amount of courage. And now the question is whether or not this was a good political decision or a perilous political decision. But regardless, on principle, I'm honored and proud.
Well, let's get into it, yeah.
You know, I'm frankly surprised, and the country's surprised, that this issue's come up in a way that's taken us this way. I mean, the precedent was for gay marriage when he ran for the state senate in '96 in Illinois. He kind of retreated from that position when he ran for president in 2008. Senator McCain chose not to deal with that. It wasn't something he was comfortable with, but clearly I knew, the campaign knew, that there had been a change of position. And then after that election, when he dealt with DOMA the way he did, I mean, it wasn't...
Defense of Marriage Act.
Yes, it wasn't any surprise that he honestly felt this way. And frankly, he owed it to the American people to say it sooner rather than later. And so I think this whole spat is a lot to do about nothing.
Well, there's a symbolic importance, Jonathan, of the president being the first one in U.S. history to say, I support gay marriage. Yes, he did it after the vice president, and we can get into that as we've talked about. But the reality of this is, the president is not making this a federal case. He's saying, I'm for it, but I'm going to let the states handle this.
Well, because the states have always been in the business of setting the qualifications for marriage. And it wasn't until Congress got into the mix by passing the so-called Defense of Marriage Act that you had the federalization of marriage. Look, this idea that the president is punting to the states, I think, is wrong. The states, as I said, they set the qualifications, but they also say who can marry, and ultimately, it's the federal constitution that judges whether states have gone too far, whether they have denied equal protection under the law. And it is clear that the president believes that constitutionally, everyone should have the right to marry, whether they're heterosexual or same-sex. And I would have to say, just to disagree with the governor here, Gavin Newsom, I do think the president was going to change his mind. I think he was going to do it sooner rather than later because he was in an untenable position. The untenable position being that his words were not matching his deeds. If you look at the president's record, as you said, he had a very pro-gay record, in particular when it came to same-sex marriage. It looked like he supported it, but he would never say the words. Ultimately, because of what happened here on this set a week ago, those words and deeds match, and you have people now who are going to benefit from that.
Right, let me get Kathleen in here about what's actually changed.
I do feel like I'm on the dating game, by the way. And I've eliminated several of you already. What was your question, David?
Just what's changed? I mean,
what's changed? I don't know that. Obviously, it's symbolically significant for the president to say he favors same-sex marriage. We knew that he did. We knew once upon a time that Mitt Romney did, for that matter. But what the great irony, of course, is that he, as you point out, he did punt back to the states, and that doesn't really help the movement to codify same-sex marriage in a national way, because already we have 30 states that have amended their constitutions to prohibit it. So I think it was actually fairly easy to say, look, I've evolved.
Right.
And then let it still.
No, it's a tough call.
Yeah.
It's
well,
a tough call.
But let me just amend my comment one way.
Answer the question.
Did we record that? I just want to amend what I said to include. I think everybody's made fun, or the people, Republicans have made fun of the word evolving. I think that's the perfect word to describe this conversation, because the American people are evolving on this issue, and increasingly they're coming on the side of same-sex marriage being the right side of history, as it's been
see, I don't necessarily agree, Kathleen, with that conclusion.
People. And by the way, in another generation, this is not going to be
could be, Kathleen, but at the same time, young people have remarkably changed their points of view in life from the time they're in their 20s to the time they get to be 32 and have 2 kids at home. Now,
that's for sure.
So maybe you might be right, but we'll see how this stands the test of time.
I don't see how if you're a gay person, I don't see how you cannot feel something strongly about this, because for the first time ever, the leader of your country, really the spokesman for your country, at an idealistic level, I mean, he isn't saying he can make this law. He's saying what he believes is with you. And he's saying you're a human being with the same rights as all other human beings. That's a dramatic statement. Chris, I think it's almost up there with the first African-American president being president. It's a statement about who we are.
And it's more than symbolic in that respect. The substance is millions of people's lives were affirmed, not just gay and lesbians, but their loved ones, their brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles and the like. So there was real substance there. Their lives were validated. These are people that were afraid to tell folks who they love and who they are. Now they have a president that's behind them, and that's significant.
But look, you're for marriage equality. You were mayor of San Francisco. We have the video. You were giving licenses to marry before
2004.
Yeah, before it was lawful. Before it was lawful. And so you believe in equality. Actual marriage equality, not viewpoints here. Equality has not been advanced by him.
You're absolutely right. He's gone from the 90-yard dash, did a lot of things on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and other things. Marriage equality was not there, but civil unions, he was there. Now he's gone 95% of the way. But the issue of federal rights is important. Interracial marriage became federalized when the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously in '67 adjudicated in Loving versus State of Virginia, and throughout those 14 states that denied it. Ultimately, that's where equality needs to go.
Let me get in here for a second. We're going to more on this, including the political impact. I got to take a break here. We'll come back with our roundtable in just a moment.
We know why we're here.
We're back with more from the roundtable, though everybody's been talking even during the commercial break. Here's a headline from Omaha, in an Omaha newspaper, about what the president now faces: risk versus reward for Obama. I guess, Al Cardenas, if you're Mitt Romney, you got social conservatives on board now because of the president's decision?
Well, social conservatives were going to revolve to his side anyway. The question was to what degree of passion. Clearly, it's a passion issue right now in a major way. Look, social conservatives believe that marriage is a traditional event between a man and a woman. Some do it for moral issues, some do it because of deeply held religious beliefs, and some purely because they think a family should be constituted by a man and a woman raising their children. But we never viewed it through a political lens before. It was more viewed as a deeply held religious belief. This puts it in a political context, and this is like the religious arguments on the 80s. You're going to have a revival of social conservatives like you haven't seen in 20 years in this race. And I think Republicans would prefer to talk about the economy and to talk about jobs.
Right.
I believe social conservatives are going to consider this a need to rally to the forefront.
Does the bullying story for Romney tie into this in any way? Does anybody think that?
I think so. I think the idea of a young kid leading a brigade of kids to go look for the kid they thought was gay, putting him down on the ground, cutting his hair off, humiliating the kid.
Romney says that was in no way the motivation.
Whether they
well, that's what he said, but the fact is he's not denying the incident at all.
You can't extrapolate from something that happened 50 years ago.
Let me come to a defense.
Hold on, I want to let Catherine finish.
I just don't think it's fair to, I mean, going back to high school, I mean, I want to know what he did in kindergarten. Did he hog the red crayon? I mean, yes, it's a bad instance. I'm not going to dismiss it as not important. It was important. But to focus on something that happened in high school and then extrapolate from that something that can be applied to the presidential.
Is there anybody here that doesn't remember high school?
Well,
what about let's talk broader political impact, though, Gavin, about gay marriage and this.
Something I didn't remember, that's for sure.
That's why do you do that? Why do you apologize?
That's more substance, but I'm sorry.
No, the political impact of the gay marriage debate in the fall. This is not 2004 when the White House used it.
2004, and it was a very different time. Right now, about 50, I mean, we've moved. I don't know that there's another issue generally that's moved this fast in such a short period of time. In the last 24 months, this has moved 10%. So it's a much safer time than in 2004.
Except at the ballot box.
Except at the ballot box. But that's always the case. When you subject the rights of a minority to the whims of a majority, every single time the minority loses. And by the way, I mentioned Loving versus State of Virginia. 70% of Americans opposed interracial marriage in 1967. You could imagine submitting the rights of interracial marriage to the ballot. So this is tough in those swing states. There's still a history is going to be written on this. That's why it was a point of, from my perspective, political courage. But he's on the right side of history. He's leaning forward, and we now have someone on the other side who's taking us back, who's even opposed to civil unions.
Jonathan, is this about getting back to hope and change in 2008 for those supporters for Obama who might have been disappointed?
I think a lot of supporters of the president are buoyed by what he did. But let's remember, leadership is about doing the hard thing when it's neither easy nor convenient. This is not a slam dunk for the president, but siding with families, with gay and lesbian Americans who are raising children across the country, who are doing so at a disadvantage because of the tax code, because of local laws, because of federal laws. Their president of the United States, came out and said that he supports their right to wed, he supports their right to be fully engaged and involved in the American dream, and that's an important thing that we shouldn't forget.
I gotta make that the last word. We're out of time. But this debate will certainly continue. Thank you all very much. That is all for today. We will be back next week. Happy Mother's Day to yours, to mine, and of course, especially to my Beth. If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.